Okay, time for another Mac and Me. This is just a quick update. This broadcast is coming to you from Butte, Montana. I'm here basically in the ancestral home of my family, essentially. Before we jump into Mac and Me, though, I want to say a few words about E.T. E.T., first of all, it's very interesting to think about why, by sort of conventional taste, E.T. is considered to be a film that works, and Mac and Me is considered to be a film that really doesn't. Of course, I would really dispute that. In many ways, I actually prefer Mac and Me. I certainly prefer it in the synchronistic context. It's just so loaded with material. E.T. gets its big stack as well, and I actually want to take a look at that stack here. And I should say I haven't done a super detailed analysis, of course, of E.T., but based on my course read of E.T., there's really just a couple big centers of activity. Now, look, I've been really wrong about this kind of thing before. It's very possible that I'm just noticing two big obvious centers of activity. And actually, when we do a closer look, we'll see that, in fact, there's all kinds of activity and et cetera. So that could easily be the case. But at the moment, anyway, I want to say that Mac and Me has much more precognitive content. However, the content that we get in E.T. is quite impressive, and so I want to take a look at it here in a second. But first, I just want to talk about some of the broad-scale similarities between these two films. I'm not going to talk that much about this because quite a bit has been said and written about this topic already. Well, first of all, I want to note that the notion of Mac as existing in connection with the earth spirits is really an idea lifted wholesale out of E.T. Because E.T. really is developed as some kind of a nature creature. When we're first introduced to him, it happens in the woods, and we see all these strange plant-like forms that kind of look like mushrooms and things on the inside of E.T.'s habitat. And then later in the film, E.T. develops, or kind of engineers a divinatory system out of a speak and spell and other odd parts. But again, it's kind of connected somehow to the natural world, you see. And when E.T. phones home, you can almost understand that he's speaking to the spirit of the trees somehow, which are rustling around in the background here. But anyway, I don't want to get caught up in these aspects at the moment. And so you can see also the sense in which, Mac is kind of trying to reunite with his family, and that whole sort of tuning in the desert thing. Really, all of that stuff is coming out of E.T. It's funny that, a film like Mac and Me exists so in such complete sort of dependence on E.T. because of all of the obvious ways in which it makes use of its source material. But then it's like the bad knockoff, but then it's the bad knockoff that receives the bulk of the strange precognitive material. I do think I perceive some funny business with that. It's like the unconscious has a preference for the imitations. Well, anyway, let's take a look at this stack because, I just find it amazing how similar it is to the material in Mac and Me in its particular details. So we're kind of led into this sequence. What's going on here? There we go. We're kind of led into this sequence by this scene, which, immediately, of course, I want to note has more of this sort of action here. together with a plane. E.T. is hiding in the closet here, of course. And then we begin this extraordinarily complex sequence, I think. We're kind of intercutting between this dissection scene in the classroom with Elliot and E.T.'s escapades at home base.
Today we will be doing the actual frog dissection, for which we've been preparing.
So I find this interesting. You know, they're about to do this frog dissection, which I think we can read, and, you know, we're not going to do a full analysis of E.T. here, but I think we can read in the context of the myth that this is representative of the kind of logos run amok, Western, you know, understand it by killing it and exposing the guts sort of approach to comprehending the world, which I think this film is, you know, quite obviously critical of, because, I mean, it's also very obvious, but we get this whole scene here where Elliot releases the frogs instead of dissecting them. Elliot, who draws pictures of a strange alien creature to which we now learn he is somehow telepathically linked. His teacher regards this as meaningless doodling. I know how you feel, Elliot. People just don't take pictures seriously enough. They don't take them seriously enough. But we're going to take them seriously. And so we're going to back up a second here. This is an interesting drawing, actually. You know, if we consider the E to be like a 3, and the 3 to be like a kind of, draw like this, coiled serpent, then we have a snake over here, and, you know, some kind of a cross or a nail or maybe an antenna, something over here. So it's a nice hemispheric image. And it's on the Eros side, which is associated with 3, and with serpents, and with the goddess, and with, you know, all the associations. It's on that side that we then get a little fractal placement of E.T. again, as if it's kind of there's another tiny E.T. in the well, yes, indeed, this would be in the right hemisphere, and then many tiny placements of the name E.T. Of course, E.T. is quite related to Elliot, same letters. Oh gosh, probably already made a whole bunch of robots very, very interested in me. Take it slow, or just take it fast for now. So now E.T. is out to wander. This dog makes an appearance. I'm always interested when these dogs appear. It's strange. Very little blood, blah, 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 explaining all this. Move into the kitchen. E.T. opens the fridge. We have a bunch of V8 stuff, Coke thing. So now this is very interesting to me because E.T. becomes intoxicated. And somehow there's a link between the physiologies of Elliot and E.T. It can't be a causal sort of link exactly. It must be some kind of a psychical link. This in a scene where the teacher's already mentioned similarity multiple times. It's also weird because then we're in a movie that then has this other weird copy, Mac and Me. Okay, this is just sort of Spielberg having some fun. He's really drunk now. This is really funny. This expression I think is hysterical. And now we're introduced to this speak and spell. So this is, or perhaps we're not introduced to it here. Maybe it makes an appearance earlier in the film. In fact, I think maybe it does. This is very interesting because, as I said, ET uses this as part of a divinatory system of some sort, or a communication system to talk to some other beings. But the speak and spell also makes an appearance in Poltergeist 3 in very interesting contexts with very weird gematria properties, just very weird properties overall. That whole film is incredibly strange and revolves around a disaster at a tower, and actually ends with a tower being struck by lightning. I hope, by the way, everyone's familiar with David Plate's incredible composite of E.T. and Poltergeist 1. Those two films, their productions were very linked, and they're almost exactly the same length. And it turns out that if you fuse them, incredible formal and semiotic content emerges. So I really recommend everybody find and watch that. It's most excellent. A section of it is quoted close to the beginning of, the 7-hour magnum opus that is Cassandra. So links it into that structure as well. But it thematizes the idea of communication with something ancient and natural through a technological surface. So I find this all very alchemical. And no sooner does that start happening that we get this image of a TV in close proximity to an image of a vehicle. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's a truck. A bird. So, that sort of implies a bird and a truck. Those together, that's pretty much a plane. 2 red candles. 2 pine cones. So the twinness is itself repeated. There's a lone candle on this side, which does create a 2-to-1 structure, which, we see, for instance, in the Twin Pines Mall becoming the Lone Pines Mall in the famous Back to the Future progression. You see it elsewhere in the constellation as well. Anyway, all that here together, of course, with the TV, and in alignment with the fireplace. It makes for a global handed match because E.T. sits here with the communication technology. I know that's a little fudged, sort of, because this is also communication technology, and we have the antenna clearly over here. So that's not exactly so constellated. But wow, the object grouping here is so insane that I really don't think it matters, particularly because of the way that this all develops. One last thing I want to say is sort of a rather subjective thing about this area. These 3 spokes here really remind me of a famous picture of Ground Zero. I can't spell. That was trying to spell Zorro or something there. But yeah, that image. I don't know, but I think it's a pretty similar picture. Okay, moving forward. Well, look at what we have on Look what we have on the TV. Another red candle, and then a cat's tail on fire. Because we know so much about the contexts here, I think it's quite possible to read that as a orange tail on, maybe it's a fox rather than a cat, but I wouldn't press that point. It doesn't matter. The point is that we have
there we see the explosion.
a handed match here quite strongly that makes use of a candle and fire right after we saw those two red candles. The previous shot. It's an explosion that or like fire that detonates the tail or the ass. So it preserves this sense of kind of lower body energy that orbits around the atomic kid. And on this side we have, oh gosh, I don't know my Tom and Jerry. This is Jerry, right? Or is the mouse Jerry? It must be Tom because it's Tom Cat, right? Yeah. So Tom is like black and gray and white. So that's North Tower resonant color content. But of course, this particular cat has a bow tie. So I'm quite afraid that makes for the sign of his birth, which is particularly interesting to see here along with the cigarette, which is a smoking element, which is held in the mouth, so that the mouth or the wound with the black smoke coming out of it, thinking back to the reference object, is symbolically represented there. Oh, by the way, for people who are just tuning in, probably need a million disclaimers if you're really just tuning in, but quick disclaimer. The sign of his birth, that's a line I'm quoting from a film called Warlock the Armageddon. This film has a very crazy high-dimensional 9/11 resonating stack in it. The jargon is now becoming very unwieldy, but it has a bunch of weird content in it that seems more than coincidentally related to 9/11. And this symbol features very heavily in that film. And is referred to as the sign of his birth, him being the Antichrist. So anyway, I find that it's a strong part of the projection space that we get in these matches. Okay, at this point we should actually probably, slow it way down and boost our visibility a little bit. I think that, it is amusing, but E.T. finds this very amusing. This is odd, and again, particularly odd when read against all the crazy material that we get in Mac and Me, all the Snorks episode stuff. Okay, and then immediately we cut out of that into an image of a plane. Also, I'm not sure what movie this is. It would be good to look that up. And then the aliens, of course. So it seems to like to manifest in samples. It's so strange. It's quotation. It's quoting like specific sections of this other material. Look, I know that sounds crazy, but I don't know how else to account for the structural similarity. It's just a fact that the images we get in Mac and Me on the Snorks episode and the images we get there from the Tom and Jerry cartoon in E.T. possess these same properties in the same way. And then actually E.T. gives us a little more juice because we get that image of the plane. Well, in fact, we get planes in funny places in the Mac and Me material as well. I didn't comment on that explicitly, but there's that whole little section there where we see the funny little man next to the little plane, right, as it swivels around to show us that incredible image that Mac is very interested in, that has the, the sign of his birth in it, that then Mac points to. We're going to see that structure is also preserved in ET in a second here. And then in both cases, it's like in the Mac and Me material, right? We have all the stuff about the radio transmission and the theme of magnetism and all this running throughout it. And then in ET there, we have the speak and spell. It's the same material, but that stuff can't really be part of, in my opinion, conscious organization. You see, it just can't really be. That stuff is too weird. Like, and the only thing that seems to explain it is the 9/11 reference object. It's just, well, okay, anyway. Anyway, moving along. So here Elliot gets the idea to not suffocate the poor animal, but to communicate with it. So Spielberg establishes a funny link there, between the skin of the frog and E.T.'s flesh. I don't know precisely what to think about that, but it's odd. Okay, we get this Buck Rogers comic. It's another crashed plane. And a satellite. So combine those two pictures and you have a handed match. Maybe I'll just do that and put that up there. Like, boom, There's your north, there's your south. It works. And it's sending out this broadcast. And then down here we have this strange, same weird combination of elements. It's just like the Snork stuff. Like, then this dude with this funny hat, I would say this is like the Atomic Kid. That's like the Atomic Kid. That's like the North Tower. Here is the North Tower riding the Atomic Kid or something. It's like, again, these like weird animal human hybrid things. Like, think back to the Mac and Me material, how similar. But we can't, at least I can't really believe that Mac and Me is quoting a quote like this, like it can't be, right? So it's all part of the whatever it is. We need a better name for the North Tower. This is the Atomic Kid. And just, by the way, here's the phone. This is the parent. So that's like Logos here. And here's the child. Hat Man, I suppose. His not a bad name. Note that the Atomic Kid is holding a red vehicle that he's moving around in the air. It's an airship. So, okay, this is kind of an interesting frame. I wonder what book that is. In any case, that's a lot of floral stuff over here, so that fits with the rose and plant motifs and so on. That's a piano, right? So that's black and white keys. That's an Atari, but it has these two joysticks. It's just like that. Each with a red button. There and there, I believe. Image of a person on a phone. Clubs, golf clubs make an appearance here. Interesting. This relates to certain structures in Freaked that we'll look at someday. Oh, is it a kangaroo, perhaps? Get a pretty good look at it there. Very interesting collection of objects there. You know, someday we'll come back to E.T. and do a deeper read of all this. It's like E.T. gets the idea to build his divinatory system by reading this comic and also looking at that TV show. Okay, now Elliot releases the frogs. That's happening as E.T. disassembles the speak and spell. So now we get another quote. Yeah. So here's this movie. It involves John Wayne in a hat. And, you know, a very red-headed Maureen O'Hara. Is he even holding a stick there? So it's like an antenna, very North Tower resonant. This is a strange image here in E.T. I think it's meant to be for laughs, but it's very weird and reminds me quite a bit of, I don't know, Kubrickian twin things. So now I find this so interesting and strange. E.T., who we might think represents Elliot's unconscious on some level, is watching a piece of video content. So a visual fantasy. Of what? Of a man in a coat, sort of black and white outfit, in a hat, dancing with a redhead. So this is an inversion here at the moment, but it's these elements joining, you know, again, the redhead and the man in the hat. It's amazing, but then even more amazing is how it's developed. Because then Elliot is reenacting that scene in real life. So there's synchronicity. There's correspondence between something happening in a fictional picture and something happening in the real world. So that content, which is not yet a handed match, but a match, is already marked as something to do with similarity, correspondence, which is also what this teacher was talking about at the beginning of the dissection scene. And, you know, and it's a union of masculine and feminine, of the twins in each case. I want to mention it here. There's material just like this in the Medusa Touch. Weird correspondence stuff between things happening on screens and things happening in the real world. And then here we get the kiss, so it's the conjunctio. It's the union. It's the 2-to-1. The The twin pines to the lone pine. Here they embrace. And now here we almost have a symbolic birth. Here comes the atomic kid. It's part of a joke too. Yes, but also look at these Nikes. And then the whole thing is... Look at how complicated this is. I mean, just as a movie, think about the progression of images here. I don't really have any answers to what this is about at a sort of a deeper level. What's exactly going on with these frogs and all this? It's, this is kind of a weird shot. It's evoking the Wizard of Oz almost a little bit. Strange energy here. But of course there would be strange energy because it's, it exists in proximity to the precognitive content. So all this archetypal stuff seems to cluster around it. I love this 3712 or like and a half, So it's a 137, which is a significant number. That's the fine structure constant, and also a number that Jung himself was quite obsessed with. Wolfgang Pauli was quite obsessed with. And it also then can be a 237. Because, we get... I find that so funny. We get both there. It's kind of like interleaved. We can read it as a 137, or we can read it as a 237. Pick which one you'd like. It's like heavy duty.
There's that word again, heavy. Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull?
Funny stuff. Okay, so this is all part of... I almost said Max. This is all part of E.T.'s machinations to construct his big, ghost radio. I wonder what's going on there in that scene. I wish I knew somebody with a crazy encyclopedic knowledge of older films. I mean, just look at that. Just a big red bee. And that's all we're going to see. It's just a whole bunch of bee stuff on that TV. We see that bee already. It's set up before. We see it in the close-up, but then there it is again. And we see again the transition into basket. So that's all already happened. Now that's just a continuity error. Or is it? And then immediately we see a terrorist. Her head next to a plant. It's that again. Growth. Because what is she looking at, Over and over again.
Sign of his birth.
Okay. That's that. I just wanted to bring that in. It seemed like a good time to do it because I was just about to talk more about this notion of the exposure process in Mac and Me. Because Here's something that was staring us in the face last time. Just a detail that I didn't see that then on the playback I noticed. That just exactly conforms to these bizarre expectations. So brace yourself. I wonder if people maybe even noticed this ahead of me, but I think I mislabeled the brother as Ben. His name is actually Michael. So as Eric approaches Michael's room, we get this image here, and I think I actually maybe even noted this at some point or looked at the numbers, but what I neglected to notice is the fact that every single one of these figures is wearing a weird fedora hat thing. And I think that some of them might even be wearing sunglasses. I can't tell. In fact, all of them might be. This says the Black and Blues Brothers. So it's in reference to the Blues Brothers who were always dressed like that. So we've been noticing, a tendency for strange hat-like shapes to
Tuna on whole wheat.
cluster
Hey, come look at this.
around television sets. And then, wow, here's just another giant, amazing instance of that actually gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 copies of of this exact weird little glyph, like right next to another television, which then forms a broadly handed match, because, well, here's the hand touching the flowers. And here's the weird communication tower. Wow, I was looking right at it and didn't see it, but there it is, and it's like perfect. And now I'm really curious about these numbers. But so far, I can't see any interesting structure in them. Proudly hosted on PhotoBucket. Yes, you should be very proud, PhotoBucket, because this is part of a incredible story. Indeed, there are, there's a pair of shades on every single one of them. And it is definitely true to the name, black and blues. Like, we have alternating light and dark patterns. So I find it all very North Tower resonant. It's just, it just blows me away. Like, look what it found. Or somehow, and then inserted into this image. Well, anyway, let's keep rolling. So we're definitely entering an area of the film that I'm less familiar with here. I'm curious to see what we'll see. It's quite a nice zoom here, actually. Interesting little stare down that we had there. Even though it has a 3 on it, which we think wants to gravitate to the Eros side. Yes. Overall, this is, of course, a North Tower resonator due to its strong aluminum element, antenna, and especially this jagged mouth thing. You just sort of add in what the correspondent reference object parts are there. Of course, on the other hand, it's a vehicle. And it being a vehicle makes it a little more South Tower. In any case, it's clear that meditating on this object is in some way growing Eric's awareness like a flower. Remember, it's part of a transmission system. Yeah, and then this drill this is truly just bizarre, don't you think? What a legitimately unexpected thing to suddenly happen in the middle of this scene. It does, however, force Eric's head into even deeper alignment with this rose image. I can't believe it. But it's another strong aluminum element gravitating towards that side. I guess that's Mac. Okay, here's another one. So we get two holes. Oh, they're eye holes. Is that right? Oh, this is so strange. I don't remember what this is, except that it's like generally part of Mac rearranging the house for some reason, I think. Yeah. That's so weird. What is Mac doing? Well, okay. This is just quite an image now. Cut it like this. I guess so weird. I guess it really is just part of Mac decorating. What exactly is the meaning of this, I wonder? Mac rearranging the home in a kind of chaotic, strange way. Okay, so here's what Mac has done. Well, it's very interesting and surely quite significant that, that Mac has made the home more natural. He's brought in all this stuff from the external world, but sorry, the G's was in reference to Mac's placement of the images. What's going on here? Here we go. This image and then this image. He's made nature and pictures central. How strange, he's put a red hat. This is really strange. Like, he's taken the severed head and then tried to make a body for it to complete it as a statue. It's almost like Mac looked at this image and then tried to extend the scene out into the space, with all these natural elements. Let's see if we see a little more of it. We see that Mac has made these things with straws that becomes significant in some way. It's a grave almost. Okay, so now Mac is like power sawing through the door. Have this strange creature in the background. What a weird series of cuts he's making. That's a triangle, I guess? Yeah. Why has Mac made this triangle in the door? It's just like a little porthole for Max to look through. So here comes Mom. There's funny pictures here with that rose painting in the background.
It's totally destroyed. What do you want me to say? I don't want you to say anything. Well, calm down, Mom. I wasn't saying anything. Look at this. Oh my God.
So everyone's still mad at Eric. Okay, now what's going on out here? Whole bunch of objects. It's kind of weird. Bicycle. Not sure what that is. Not sure. Car thing. Skateboard. Basketball. Soccer ball. More sports things, maybe. These roses. Okay, here comes Debbie. I love the wilderness here outside of the garden, you know? There's something very magical about this image. Eric's crossing a threshold here of some kind, you know? So I believe that this culminates in Eric's fall, which I think also has qualities of a baptism. There's like this very famous sequence. I guess we should watch it properly. So that's, you know, a very obvious dummy. But symbolically, I find this very interesting, you know. Eric's sort of, he's taken a leap of faith, and then he's saved by falling into a pool. I think it just gets very Christic here, somehow. Such a bizarre shot. And then it's just like Max sitting up in the... I guess this is like a rear projection thing or some kind of strange composite, you know? It's a very weird, like suddenly dark, sort of abrupt tonal shift. E.T. is dark as well, but Spielberg really crafts the entrances and the exits from that material, you know. This is much more all over the place, which makes it much stranger, though, in the end, which makes me enjoy it a little bit more in some kind of strange way. It's like a baptism, but it's a very frightening baptism. A baptism with the possibility of death, of drowning. That's interesting. Let's think a little bit more about that. As it relates to the rest of the film, and probably particularly as it relates to the rebirth material that we get much later. Okay, I think I'm going to call it after this scene. It's just getting late and I'm getting tired. What is it? Yeah, it's 11. I want to go take a bath, so... That bathrobe reminded me. There are salts waiting to soothe my aching bones. So, not a whole lot happening in the Mac and Me portion this time, I guess. Well, I mean, there's quite a bit happening here narratively and thematically, but not in the way... Oh, gosh, it's a terrible looking puppet or person in a suit, whatever that was. In the way of constellation activity, I guess we really did sort of expend our precog budget for the day on ET. Wow, it's impressive the way it lines up with this material. I'm still kind of reeling from that. I think that's more or less the end of this section. Eric survives, of course. But only because Mac pushes him out of water. Right, so it's an initiatory journey in which Eric learns to truly see. Right, that's his first glimpse really face to face with Mac? Is that true? I guess there's the whole encounter with where Mac leaps out of the fridge and so on, but there is something very clear happens, you know. And thinking about the psychological or alchemical metaphor space of the film, yeah, you know, that's pretty much how it works. I remember my moment very clearly when I jumped off the cliff and drowned. Thought I was going to drown. And then the anima delivered me back to safety in the end. And then I said, wow, let's do that again. And then I went back up and did this whole thing very many times. And over the course of those many times, her and I made a whole bunch of pictures. And I'm actually getting ready to talk about many of those pictures in my more kind of above ground Facebook discussions. It's going to be the next one. It's going to be all about my automatic drawing procedures and all this stuff. I'm, you know, still nervous about that, but not really. I think it's going to be okay. Okay, well, anyway, talking again about the psychological metaphor space and so on, I find this very sort of hero's journey, myth cycle, sort of resonant and correct according to my understanding of those processes. Gosh, I'm tired. Anyway, I hope that was all clear and basically wraps up the ending here. Let's just watch and super conclude this. Of course, the adult still doesn't understand, doesn't see that this involved a Mac.
I can't believe he did this.
She wonders if this wasn't some kind of a suicide attempt, probably. It's also quite interesting because it is a kind of suicide in the sense of ego death. So all these themes are really orbiting here and quite tightly networked to one another, I think.
It's all right, Mama. Get it. No. Just go and get some help.
And then, you know, then we're in this kind of thing again. But we'll have to pick this up next time because I'm definitely ready for my bath. Okay, well, thanks everybody for hanging again. I thought we found some really cool stuff in ET. And just peek ahead here. Right, now we have the whole encounter with the doctor. Mom is her first day at work. There's this whole thing. There's a lot to get through here. Very significant, interesting things happen here. So, yeah, anyway. We'll get to all this stuff in the near future. For now, it's over and out, and I will see you in the future. So, bye-bye.